On a cold morning in Southfield, a 9-year-old black boy boarded a city bus alone for the first time, clutching a dollar bill. He was excited for a chance to finally try a slice of pizza. But when he saw an injured woman being insulted and kicked off the bus by the driver for not having money, the boy made a decision that stunned everyone. What he didn't know was that this seemingly small act of kindness would open the door to a brighter future, one he never dared to dream of. Southfield woke up under a blanket of gray clouds, the kind that pressed low against the skyline like a warning. The morning chill slid beneath cracked window frames and through the drafty doors of a rundown apartment building where Marcus lived with his 9-year-old son Tyrese. Their unit, a modest 2-room space with peeling paint and second-hand furniture, hummed quietly with the sound of boiling water on the stove. Tyrese sat at the small kitchen table, slipping on his worn sneakers, while Marcus paced by the window, phone in hand, frustration mounting with every unanswered ring. He'd arranged with Miss Dolores, his elderly neighbor from 2 floors down, to walk Tyrese to school today, but now she wasn't picking up. Her voicemail played for the 5th time, and Marcus rubbed his temple, eyes darting between the phone and the wall clock. He had 20 minutes before the bus left for the warehouse job he'd been praying to land for weeks. Missing that interview could mean another month without steady income. The rent was late, the fridge nearly empty, and all he had left in his wallet was a single dollar bill. "Dad," Tyrese said, tugging gently at his coat sleeve, "I remember the way. I can take the bus myself." Marcus knelt down to meet his son's eyes. "Ty, you've never done that alone. It's not just about knowing the stop. You gotta stay alert, stay close to the driver. Don't talk to anyone, you hear me?" "I'll be fine," Tyrese said, his voice carrying a quiet courage that tugged at Marcus's heart. "I'm not a baby." Marcus hesitated, the decision clawed at him. He wanted to be the kind of father who always showed up, always protected, but survival had its demands. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the dollar bill, creased soft, his last, and pressed it into Tyrese's small hand. "This'll get you on the bus," he said, his voice tight. "Don't lose it. Don't spend it on snacks. You eat that pizza at school, okay? You've been talking about it all week." Tyrese nodded, fingers clutching the bill like it was gold. As Marcus watched his son walk out the door, backpack bouncing against his shoulders, a knot of guilt formed in his chest. He'd sent his boy into a world that didn't always see black children as innocent, but he had no choice, not today. The Southfield city bus hissed to a stop at the corner, its rusting metal frame groaning under the weight of another tired morning. Tyrese stood at the curb, the dollar bill still crumpled tight in his fist. The paper felt soft from his father's hands, worn from too many trades for too little. It wasn't just a dollar, it was his breakfast. It was the slice of pizza he'd been thinking about since Monday. It was the last piece of control Marcus could give him, and now it was his. He stepped up onto the bus slowly, peering up at the driver, a middle-aged white man with a sagging face and a permanent scowl like it had been carved there by years of bitterness. The man didn't look at him, just extended a hand, palm open. Tyrese placed the dollar in it, fingers reluctant to let go. For a second the boy hesitated, eyes flicking to the empty seats beyond the turnstile, then back to the driver. "What, you deaf?" the driver muttered, snapping the ticket from the machine and shoving it toward him without making eye contact. Tyrese took the stub and nodded slightly. "Good morning," he said, but it hung in the air like a whisper no one cared to hear. The boy moved to the back of the bus and slid into a window seat, resting his backpack in his lap like a shield. The city passed outside, blurred and gray, chain-link fences, cracked sidewalks, people with too many bags under their eyes and not enough in their pockets. Inside the bus, the heater clicked noisily. An older woman sniffled behind him. Someone coughed. Tyrese kept his eyes forward, heart beating a little faster than he wanted to admit. He thought about the pizza again. Melting cheese, crispy crust, that little square tray they served it on at school. He hadn't had it in weeks. Not since Marcus started stretching their groceries thin. He tried not to be mad about that. His dad worked hard, he gave everything, but still it hurt sometimes. Missing out on little things that other kids had without even noticing. Tyrese looked down at his sneakers. One lace was frayed to almost nothing. The left sole flapped slightly with every step. The dollar was gone now. And he'd chosen that. He told himself it was okay, that pizza could wait. But it didn't stop the knot that twisted in his stomach, a mix of hunger and something heavier. Something like understanding. He wasn't a baby, not anymore. He was 9, alone on a city bus for the first time, and even if the world didn't look at him and see a kid worth protecting, he was going to make it to school. He was going to hold it together. Because that's what Marcus needed him to do, because that's what being strong looked like. At the 4th stop, the bus doors wheezed open with a tired groan and the cold crept in again. A woman stepped up onto the first stair, hesitating like the very air inside might push her back. Tyrese looked up from the window, his eyes drawn to her immediately, not because she was loud or strange, but because something about her didn't fit. Her coat was too thin for the cold, sleeves torn at the cuffs, mud clung to the edges, and there was a faint streak of blood along one cheekbone, the kind you only notice if you're paying attention. Tyrese was. She moved carefully, like she'd been running or hiding, her breath still uneven. Her hair, though messy, was clean, and her posture, though she tried to shrink, hinted at someone who wasn't used to shrinking at all. A small embroidered logo peeked out from beneath her coat collar, barely visible, like a thread from a life left behind. She reached into her coat pocket, searching, then stopped. Her hands trembled. I lost my wallet," she said to the driver, her voice controlled, almost too proper for the scene unfolding. "I just need to get to Midtown Medical. I can pay later, I swear." The driver didn't even blink. He leaned back, scoffing. "You people always got a story." The words hung in the air like a slap. Tyrese flinched, though the words weren't aimed at him this time. A few passengers looked up, then looked down again just as quickly. "Please," the woman said. "I was robbed. I don't have anything on me." "Then get off my bus," the driver barked, rising halfway from his seat. "Ain't a charity ride? You think I was born yesterday? You all run the same damn play. Get on, cry a little, disappear." Therese watched her lips tremble as she opened them, then closed them again. She wasn't crying, not yet, but her face had that tightness, the kind grown-ups wore when they were trying not to fall apart in front of strangers. "I'm not lying," she whispered. "I'm not trying to get anything for free." "You ain't getting anything for free today, that's for damn sure," he snapped. "You're bleeding. For all I know, you're high, or worse. Don't bring that trouble on my bus." Tyrese's chest tightened. There was something in the driver's tone, the way he said "you people," like the way that security guard used to follow Marcus around the store, pretending to check prices. It wasn't just about rules, it was about who was asking. The woman took a step back toward the door. Her face was flushed with embarrassment, and now the tears were starting, slow and silent. No one moved. Not the man with the briefcase, not the woman with earbuds. A teenage boy 2 seats over stared at the floor like it had the answers. Tyrese gripped the edge of his seat, legs stiff. His stomach churned, not from hunger this time, but from something sharper. Shame. Helplessness. He felt small, powerless. And still the woman stood there, eyes locked on the driver, as if begging for a scrap of dignity. But he had none to give. Tyrese didn't remember standing up. His body moved before his mind could argue. His palms were sweating, heart pounding like it was trying to knock its way out of his chest. The woman was still at the front of the bus, shoulders curling inward under the weight of eyes and silence, and that driver's words, sharp like broken glass. The other passengers had gone still, locked in place by the unspoken rule of city life. Don't get involved, don't look too long, don't care too loudly. But Tyrese was 9, and he cared. He reached into the front pocket of his hoodie, fingers brushing the empty lining where that last dollar had been. Gone. Then he remembered. He'd tucked the transfer stub in his backpack. The driver hadn't seen him do it, too busy grumbling under his breath. Tyrese's hands fumbled through the zipper. Inside a mesh pouch was a $1 bill, flattened and folded 4 times. He stared at it. It was pizza day. He could already taste it, the cafeteria tray, the cheese bubbling on top, the way the other kids laughed and shared bites like it was no big deal. For him it was always a big deal, and now he held the choice in his hand, his stomach or her dignity. Therese took a shaky breath, stepped into the aisle and walked forward, that dollar crinkled tight in his fist. "Here," he said, voice small but steady. "I'll pay for her." The driver blinked. "What?" "For her ride," Therese said louder, holding the money out. "She can have mine." The man looked at him like he was joking, like the idea of a little black boy doing something decent just didn't compute. "This your mama or something?" Therese shook his head. "So why you care?" Therese didn't answer, he just held out the dollar again. Behind him, a cough broke the silence. Then the sound of coins clinking. An old man near the back reached into his pocket and tossed a few nickels into the tray. A woman near the middle murmured, "Let the boy sit down." Her voice cracked a little. The driver exhaled hard through his nose, snatched the bill from Therese's hand, and waved the woman on like he was doing the world a favor. "Get in." "Don't make a scene." The woman walked down the aisle slowly, her face still flushed. She paused beside Therese, eyes wide, red-rimmed. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't say anything, just nodded once and walked back to his seat, legs shaking now. When he sat, he stared at the floor, fists clenched tight on his knees, heart thudding so hard he thought everyone could hear it. It wasn't about the dollar anymore. It wasn't about pizza. It was about the way that driver had looked at her, spoken to her like she was less than human. Therese had seen that look before. At stores, in the way teachers talked to Marcus, in the silence that swallowed kindness too easily. Now the bus rolled forward again, quiet as snowfall, but something had changed. Not the world, not yet. But maybe something in him. The woman sat down beside Therese slowly, as if unsure the seat would hold her. She didn't speak right away. Her fingers trembled in her lap, pale knuckles clutching the frayed edge of her coat, eyes flicking toward the driver as if expecting another blow, this time with words sharper than fists. Therese didn't look at her at first. He kept his gaze fixed on the back of the seat in front of him, as if it might swallow the pounding in his chest. The heat blowing from the vent above buzzed like static, masking the thick, awkward silence between them. Then she whispered, "You didn't have to do that." Therese shrugged without looking up. "Yeah, I did." She blinked, turning slightly toward him. Her voice softened. "Why?" He was quiet for a moment, then spoke, eyes still down. "'Cause no one else was gonna—" The woman exhaled, shaky and short, like she'd been holding her breath for too long. "I don't know what to say," she murmured. Therese finally looked at her. Her eyes were still red, and the corner of her mouth was swollen, just slightly. He reached into his backpack, rummaged through crumpled papers and pencils, and pulled out a single napkin. Folded, worn but clean. He held it out. She took it slowly, blinking hard as she pressed it to her cheek. "What's your name?" she asked, her voice fragile. "Therese," he said, his voice steady now. "What's yours?" She hesitated. "Nia." There was a beat of silence before Therese added quietly, "That driver? He yelled at my dad once. 'Cause we were short 10 cents. Made us get off. We had to walk home." He didn't say it like he was asking for sympathy. He said it like it was just something that had happened, part of the landscape of being who he was in the city he lived in. But then he looked up at her, a flicker of something stronger behind his eyes. "I was scared then," he said. "But I'm not scared now." That was it. No grand speech, just truth, small and heavy like a stone in the chest. Nia nodded slowly, folding the napkin between her fingers. Her lips parted, but whatever she wanted to say got lost somewhere between gratitude and guilt, so she didn't say anything more. She just sat there, beside the boy who had offered her more than $1. He had offered her her place back in the world. When the bus reached the 6th stop, Therese stood, pulling the straps of his backpack tight against his shoulders. His feet felt heavier than they had that morning. Nia didn't move at first. She watched him rise, something unreadable flickering across her face, part wonder, part ache. Tyrese turned to her, gave a small wave, then stepped down the aisle without another word. He didn't need to say goodbye. In his mind, this was over. Just a moment. A thing he'd done because someone needed him to. But Nia watched him all the way down the aisle. She watched as he passed the driver, whose eyes darted away in shame or irritation, she couldn't tell which. She watched him step off into the gray morning, the chill hitting his face, his breath puffing in small clouds. He didn't look back. She pressed her face briefly to the bus window as it pulled away, watching the boy grow smaller, his backpack bouncing against him with each step. Her hand rested lightly on the glass, the napkin still clutched in her other hand. That napkin now felt like a thread, pulling her towards something she didn't want to lose. Something she didn't want to forget. She took a shaky breath, reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a pen. Small, silver, a gift from a past life that now felt distant. She looked around and tore off a piece of the transfer slip still tucked into the seat seam. Then, quickly and neatly, she scribbled down what she remembered. Route 14, 6:52 a.m., 6th and Grand, near Brayview Elementary. She wasn't even sure why. Not yet. But something in her told her she'd need that information. Something told her this wasn't over. Nia leaned back in the seat and let her head rest against the window. The weight in her body wasn't just exhaustion anymore. It was the weight of realization, of knowing that the boy who had given up his last dollar without hesitation had done more than most grown adults ever would. He had seen her. Not her clothes, not her wounds, not her desperation. Her. And she couldn't let that go. As the bus curved through Midtown, her phone buzzed to life in her pocket. Service had returned. She gripped it, the cracked screen lighting up with missed calls, texts, chaos. Her thumb hovered over the name Dad, but she didn't press it yet. Instead, she opened her camera and took a photo of the torn slip with her handwriting on it, saving the moment before the noise of the world drowned it out. She would find out who he was. Not because she felt indebted, not because she was supposed to, but because sometimes the world tilted, just slightly, when someone did the right thing. And she wasn't about to let it tilt back without doing something right in return. The next morning, the sun broke through the Southfield haze for the first time in days, its light soft but sharp, like it was trying to make something clear. At Brayview Elementary, the front gates creaked open to let in the early trickle of students. But before the morning bell rang, a black SUV rolled slowly to a stop outside the front office. It didn't belong. Not here. Not among the rusted minivans and dented sedans that usually lined the block. The engine cut off, and out stepped Nia, dressed simply now, hair pulled back, a light scarf covering the bruise near her cheekbone. Her posture was composed, but her fingers gripped the handle of her purse like it was holding her together. Inside the office, the secretary glanced up with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. Nia walked to the desk, voice calm but firm. "Good morning. I'm looking for a student named Tyrese. He would have gotten off at the 6th and Grand stop yesterday morning. I believe he's in 3rd grade. The secretary raised a brow. "And you are?" "Someone he helped," Nia replied. "Someone who wants to thank him properly." The woman behind the desk hesitated, her fingers pausing over the keyboard. "We don't give out student information to non-family." "I understand," Nia said gently. "But I don't need his file, just maybe a conversation, maybe a way to speak to his parent." A quiet cough interrupted them from the hallway. Marcus stood just outside the door, still wearing his delivery uniform, eyes wary. He had come to speak with the counselor about Tyrese's lunch assistance renewal, but when he heard the name he froze. And now here he was, staring at a woman he didn't recognize, but who somehow looked at him like she already knew him. "I'm his dad," he said, stepping forward. Nia turned slowly, eyes searching his. "You raised a remarkable kid," she said softly. Marcus stiffened. Why? What happened? And so she told him. About the bus, about the dollar, about the napkin. She didn't exaggerate, didn't romanticize it. She just let the truth sit in the space between them. When she finished, Marcus swallowed hard. He looked away for a second, blinking back the heat behind his eyes. "I want to help," Nia said. "Just for this school year. A scholarship, some support, nothing more unless you want it." Marcus said nothing at first, then finally he nodded once, slowly, like someone accepting the kind of grace they never expected. By the end of that week, Tyrese had no idea his life was already shifting beneath his feet. All he knew was that his lunch tray held 2 slices of pizza instead of 1, and for the first time in months, he hadn't had to skip breakfast. The letter home said he'd been granted a temporary scholarship based on character and need, but the grown-up language didn't mean much to him. What mattered was the look on his dad's face when he read it. Something between disbelief and quiet relief. Like he'd been holding his breath for too long and finally remembered how to exhale. But behind the scenes, Nia moved like someone with purpose. She called the school again, spoke with the principal. She reached out to a colleague in the local education board and quietly covered Tyrese's tuition for the rest of the year. She had her company's outreach division send new school supplies to Braeview's neediest classrooms. No fanfare, no names attached. She didn't want to be seen. She just wanted the scales to tip, even slightly, toward fairness. And Marcus? She didn't forget him either. Through her connections at Vitech Med, she arranged a conversation, not a handout, but a real interview, with the facilities division. His background in electrical work, years of odd jobs and technical school credits came together like puzzle pieces he thought he'd lost. Within a month he was hired as a junior technician with benefits and a steady paycheck. The day he came home wearing a uniform with his name stitched over his heart, Tyrese stared at it like it was a trophy. Their apartment changed too. They moved out of the cold, creaky building on 8th and Lenox into a modest 2-bedroom place near the school. It wasn't fancy, faded carpet, old paint. But the heat worked and there was hot water that didn't run cold after 5 minutes. The kitchen had a table big enough for 2 plates and a real lamp overhead. For Tyrese it felt like a castle. Sometimes Nia visited. She never stayed long. She came with books or school supplies or simply to say hello. She and Marcus spoke like people who understood life's harder edges, but didn't feel the need to speak about them aloud. One Friday morning, months later, Braeview held its annual Kindness Week assembly. Students were asked to write about someone who had made an impact on them. Tyrese stood at the podium in a clean shirt and new shoes, his voice a little shaky, but his back straight. "I don't know if what I did was that big," he said, eyes scanning the crowd. "I just saw someone who needed help and I had something I could give. That's what my dad says, that even if it's small, if you can give it, you should." His voice faltered for half a second, but he smiled. "And I think sometimes that's how the world changes. Just a little, but enough." In the back of the room, Nia stood silently beside Marcus, her hands clasped in front of her, eyes glistening but steady. They didn't clap any louder than the others. But they didn't need to. Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.